What is going on, everybody? Episode 5 of the Offsetting Penalties Podcast, and 2 minutes ago, fired up the pod immediately. I was planning on recording it later tonight, but UFC 321 just concluded right as I'm recording this. What the hell, man? This sucks. We're just going to jump straight into it. I don't need to give a big intro. If you're here, you know what happened. Tom Aspinall, Ciryl Gane, ends in a no decision because of an eye poke towards the end of round 1. This sucks, dude. This sucks. And a lot of people looked at Ciryl Gane, and he was kind of crouching in the octagon. He was like getting emotional and stuff, and I feel so bad for Ciryl. And I do feel a little bad for Ciryl Gane because it clearly wasn't it was not an intentional act, right? He had been doing it the entire round. He was every time he threw a kick, he was like this. But what I really feel devastated for is Tom Aspinall. This sucks. For Tom Aspinall, this is the worst. This dude got put on the sidelines for a year and a half because of Jon Jones. He wanted to fight, and he just needed to know if he was going to fight the heavyweight champion. And Jon Jones ruined a year of this guy's prime years. And then he comes back against Ciryl Gane. He finally gets booked to fight, and he's fighting. He got popped a little bit. This is the most we've seen Tom Aspinall bleed inside the UFC octagon. But dude, what happens? He gets eye poked, and all of a sudden we're here talking about what's next? When is he going to get rebooked? It goes down as a no contest. This is just horrible for all parties. This is the first no contest in UFC history besides Jones-Cormier. And that one became a no contest because it got overturned because Jon Jones tested positive for steroids for like the 25th time. This is the first no contest that happened in the octagon for a championship fight. This sucks, man. It really does, because Tom Aspinall, many people like me are big Tom Aspinall truthers and believe that there was the leaked DC clip of him talking about this. Daniel Cormier was whispering to Tom Aspinall saying, think about the run you could go on. And many people like myself thought 100%, I'm a huge Tom Aspinall fan, and I didn't think there was a single person in the heavyweight division right now that could beat him. Now, granted, it's heavyweight MMA. You land one shot, you're out. But I didn't think anyone in this division could beat him. And this was going to be his first defense, and it was going to be okay, the heavyweight division's getting moving again. And the heavyweight division was so stagnant for so long. In today's card, this plus the Volkov-Almeida fight, which I'll touch on a little later, just kind of all of a sudden, right when we thought heavyweight was gaining some steam, gaining some traction, we're stuck here again. And it sucks. It's unfortunate circumstances. The crowd was booing Tom. He did not deserve to be booed. If you saw it, it was a double eye poke. It wasn't just an eye poke. It was a double eye poke. The eye that looked the worst was not the eye that was bothering him, but the eye that was bothering him, you can see in the replay, at first it just kind of scrapes, and then Ciryl Gane almost digs it in more, and it's almost knuckle deep, and it was kind of on one side of the eye. It wasn't square on the eye. It just sucks. The heavyweight division finally we thought was going to get moving, and now we're stuck here again. And it's all right, we're rebooking this fight, and Ciryl Gane was popping Tom Aspinall. He was landing some good oblique kicks. He had his nose leaking because he landed a couple jabs, landed a good 2. The broadcast crew, specifically Daniel Cormier, was acting like Ciryl Gane was winning the fight. I thought it was 50-50 because Tom Aspinall did land some right hands on Ciryl Gane for sure. And he also partially landed 2 head kicks. They were mostly blocked by Ciryl Gane's guard, but they still got through. This sucks. It just sucks. I wish that we could have gotten a legit heavyweight title fight, and this is the first legitimate heavyweight title fight since Jon Jones, Ciryl Gane. I mean, you can count Tom Aspinall, Curtis Blades, but that's always going to have the interim title attached to it, which is BS, but that's the reality. This is the first legit heavyweight fight in a while. Stipe Jon Jones was a joke, and Tom Aspinall, Curtis Blades had that interim title attached to it, and now we get a no contest, and it's okay, well, what do we do from here? So, as everyone is, I'm very disappointed. You have to rebook it, and the only reason you have to rebook it is because Ciryl was landing on Tom and was making a good account of himself in the fight. So it wasn't like Tom was getting beat up or it wasn't like Ciryl was getting beat up, and then I poked Tom as a way out, and then this was a very evenly matched fight through the 4.5 minutes that it went. It sucks. I keep saying that, but it just does. And, I wish there was more to talk about with this. I came into this pod fully anticipating we talk about some matchmaking. We talk about, what's next for Aspinall, or if Gane had won, what's next for Gane. And now we're sitting here and we're just like, man, when do we rebook them? If we are going to rebook them, which I think that's kind of what, there's not another clear heavyweight contender unless Jones or Pereira comes up. If you do rebook this, maybe the January pay-per-view, the first CBS / Paramount card, that one should be down here in LA. Maybe it's not. And it was very much rumored that it was going to be Ilya, but it sounds like Ilya Patty hasn't happened. They don't want Ilya Gaethje. Arman already has had issues with weight cuts and injuries and stuff, so he's fighting in November. There's no way they make him do a month and a half turnaround, or there's no way he agrees to that. So it's just tough, man. It's tough that this is where we're at, but it is, and I hope it gets rebooked sooner than later. I hope Tommy Aspinall's eye gets better, because, yeah, it's just wasting more years from his prime, and that's the worst. That's the worst thing about this, is we have someone who could go down in the UFC. He's already in the UFC record books for, shortest fight time and stuff like that, and now we're looking at this and another year of his prime is being wasted, and, who knows, this could seriously impact the trajectory of Tom Aspinall's career. It sucks. I keep saying it, but it does, and I wish there was more to talk about, but there isn't. So we're going to get to the one title fight that did finish up tonight, and surprisingly not bad. Mackenzie Dern is the new strawweight champion of the world. She defeats Vina Jandiroba by unanimous decision. One judge had it 49-46. The other two had it 48-47. Both fair scorecards. Those were the two I was torn between. I thought Mackenzie won the fight, and I thought the scorecards in this one were pretty spot on. And it was like an oddly fun fight. I think, sometimes you get these matchups, and I talked about this on my preview pod. I didn't think this was like a title caliber fight. And I think Jandiroba probably still isn't title caliber, because I think all we've seen her do against high-level competition is have good wrestling. But as we saw with Jailton Almeida, and as we see a lot, just because you have good wrestling, you have to have other parts of your game to complete your game. And Virna would take Mackenzie Dern down, and Mackenzie Dern, who's got great jiu-jitsu, Virna would not jump into her guard, would not willingly engage in jiu-jitsu, because Mackenzie Dern's one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners of all time, ever. And not to say Verna's jiu-jitsu isn't good, but it was clear she didn't want to exactly do jiu-jitsu with her. And then when Virna would kind of stay in that ground and pound range, she was eating hammer fists and elbows from the bottom. Mackenzie wouldn't stop, and she was just active. She was like an Energizer bunny the entire fight. And I thought it was a really, really good performance. In her post-fight interview, Mackenzie said, she saw the Almeida Volkov fight and saw that you can't lay on people and be inactive. You had to be, activity will win fights, especially with the judges tonight on this Abu Dhabi card. And good on her, because that's probably the difference in this fight. When it was standing, Mackenzie looked better there too, right? Her boxing was very, very crisp, and what a gas tank. She has an unbelievable gas tank for being able to not just throw a lot on the feet, but when she got taken down over and over and over. And then not only would she eventually get back up, when she was down, she was throwing a bunch from the bottom. Getting taken down like that is very, very draining. That's why so many people struggle with fighting Merab, and Mackenzie Dern got it done, and it was a really, really good performance. And you know what? She's justifiably so the strawweight champion of the world. And if Zhang Weili ever comes back down, I think Zhang Weili, for the foreseeable future, is taking this division. And I think if Weili stays at 125 after the super fight with Valentina, no matter win or lose, I think we're looking at Mackenzie Dern, potentially defending her belt a couple times. That's what I think of Mackenzie Dern's game, because like I touched on in my preview pod, the only opponents we've seen her lose to are power punchers. And right now, the two power punchers in the division, which are Amanda Lemos and Jessica Andrade, are not in the title conversation at all. So that's kind of where strawweight is right now. You got Tatiana Suarez, and maybe I'm a little biased because I like Lupi Godinez a lot, but I think she's there too. But those two, Mackenzie is probably as good on the feet. She's probably better. She's definitely better on the feet than Tatiana. Loopy probably has the edge with her on the boxing, but the one reason I highlight those two girls as potential matchups for her is because they have very good offensive wrestling, especially Tatiana, and Loopy does as well. And I think that could kind of present issues for Mackenzie Dern. But we've already seen Mackenzie Dern beat Loopy Godinez, and Tatiana Suarez doesn't exactly have steam on her right now. She kind of won a snore fest against Lemos last time out and did not look good against Zhang Weili, which is Zhang Weili. It's a different level. But yeah, strawweight's in an interesting place right now. I think flyweight is definitely where it's at for the women right now. And regardless, it was a great win for Mackenzie Dern. She looked good, incredible gas tank. Really the best her boxing has looked to me in a while. And I think, for Verna, she just doesn't have a diverse enough game. I think on the feet, she lands, but it's clear she doesn't throw. She isn't fast. She doesn't throw with any power at all. She's got very good wrestling, and she's got good jiu-jitsu, but a lot of the people we've seen her submit haven't exactly been high-level grapplers. She submitted Amanda Lemos, who isn't exactly a high-level grappler. And, the fights against the people who are good, she either loses or she wins, and it's like decisions because she just relies on her wrestling and her takedowns, which are very good. She had a very good game plan against Mackenzie, but you just got to be active on the feet. In MMA, it's always going to cater to the fighters on the feet because every round starts on the feet, like Joe Rogan always talks about for 30 minutes every podcast. So that's that. Mackenzie Dern, strawweight champion of the world. Weird saying that. Who would have thought that would be, 6 months ago, a year ago? But that's where we are, and, good for Mackenzie Dern. It was a great performance. It was cool seeing her give her belt to her daughter in the octagon. That was a really cool shot of her daughter with the belt on her shoulder going like this. It was a great performance, and, we can move on to the future bout now, which I think there was a handful of really good fights tonight. This was by far the best fight in the main card, without a doubt. Umar Nurmagomedov defeats Mario Bautista by unanimous decision. All three judges had it 30-27. It was a really high-level fight. Really, really high level, because Umar showed that he is title caliber, and I think they kind of over-talk, the DC especially, and DC's obviously homies with all the Dagestani guys, always talks about Umar's the only one that could, that's taken Murad close. And it kind of gets boring to hear that, especially because the fallout from that fight in January, it was Umar has the broken wrist and he won round 3, and that's clear. I think anyone with a brain watching that fight knows that Murad won that fight against Umar. But looking at it, it was the closest fight Murad has had with anyone in his title reign. It just is. Corey gave him a good fight, but it was not nearly, the performance over Corey was way more dominant than it was over Umar. And Murad came into that fight with staph infection and some injuries of his own. Umar obviously broke his hand in the fight. He's talked about that a million times since that fight happened. So realistically, I would love to see them run this fight back with both guys at full strength, because everyone wants to talk about who Umar wasn't full strength, but neither was Murad. And if both guys could be full strength, oh my goodness. Now we're looking at a fight, because their first fight was already one of the best bantamweight fights of all time, especially in recent history. So, I'd really love for them to run that back. Anyways, back to the Umar Bautista fight. I thought what impressed me most about Umar was the adversity that he had to overcome. Round 1, he gets put in a toe hold, and it was brutal. It was nasty, and you could tell he was limping on it a little bit after round 2 later in the fight. But went through that, continued to fight his fight. At the beginning of round 2, he ate a pretty nasty knee from Mario. Very well timed. Didn't really land flush, because if it landed flush, Umar's lights probably go out. But it still landed. It was more shin on the jaw than it was knee, even though Mario was throwing a knee. For Umar to overcome those two things and still be dominant, it was really impressive. He showed why he's title caliber. He showed why he's, if you were ranking I know they have the rankings and everything, but Umar should be number 1 in the rankings. He is. He's better than everyone else in the rankings besides the champion, until proven otherwise. So I think Umar showed he's that guy still. It was a fun fight to watch. Obviously it was 3 rounds and a pace was pushed. Mario pushes a pace in all his fights. And a pace was pushed in this one. If this one was 5 rounds, who knows if it goes a little differently. But the big takeaway is, okay, if you're fighting Murad, it's going to be 5 rounds. And you lost both the championship rounds to Murad in that last fight. And, you can fight at a high pace and be effective for 3 rounds. Can you do it for 5 rounds? it's to be seen. Umar's talking. There was a quote this week about how with the broken hand, his gas tank went down. Last I checked, the way human anatomy works, a broken hand doesn't usually correlate to your lungs and your cardio. But what do I know? Regardless, this was a really high caliber fight, really fun fight. I want to give a lot of props to Mario Bautista. He showed that he is a top bantamweight in this division. He went on the road. He went to Abu Dhabi. It wasn't like this was a home game for him. This was a home game for Umar. And he never let Umar settle into positions, right? Every time Umar took him down, Mario was always trying to find ways, whether it was the toe hold in round one or the other situations where he was just scrambling to get up, scrambling to go into a different position. He was always fighting the body triangles. The way Umar is able, when he's on your back, to just seamlessly switch the body triangle from one side to the other is phenomenal. It's unbelievably high level. So, yeah, it was a really, really high level fight. I really enjoyed it from a technical point of view, and good on Umar for getting the dub in this one. This is the fight. Obviously, Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gane will be talked about the most. Alexander Volkov versus Jailton Almeida has been very debated upon since it happened on social media. Volkov beats Almeida, split decision. 2 judges had it 29-8. Volkov, 1 judge had it 29-8. Almeida. So I have here in my notes, out in all caps, Almeida robbed. When the fight first ended, I was shocked. I was unbelievably shocked because watching that fight, it really did feel like, okay, Volkov won round 1 and then Jailton pretty clearly wins round 2 and 3. But it's a reminder to MMA fans, and this is a reminder to myself as well, that the way judging goes, right? 1, takedowns aren't scored. Takedowns are not something judges factor into the criteria. You can get takedowns, it's great, but really it's the control time, the submission attempts, the ground and pound damage. That's the stuff that matters more. 2, it's so easy because MMA fights, unless you're the ones fighting in the fight, they move by so quick. It's really easy to kind of in your head think about the last minute or 2 of the round, and that's who you give the round to. There was a stretch at the beginning of round 3 where Volkov was slamming knees into Almeida on the fence. And that's where I go, oh, maybe it wasn't as bad of a robbery as I thought it was. And DC brought this up on the broadcast, where that first minute that Volkov was kneeing him, that's the most damage, the most strikes that was thrown that round. Because then Almeida took Volkov down again and just kind of did nothing with it. There was no submission attempts. There was no ground and pound. And I said on the preview pod earlier in the week that Almeida's a finisher, and people kind of get these recent fights like the Derek Lewis fight in their head. Now, after watching this fight, it's kind of becoming apparent to me that Almeida finishes the lower level heavyweights and the higher level heavyweights. He has no problem getting them down, but he doesn't have a great time finishing the fights. And that was the Curtis Blades fight, in which he did end up getting knocked out in round 2 because of the hammer fist. In round 1, he was ragdolling Curtis Blades. He was like a legit grappler, right? In this fight, he was ragdolling Rakic. But you got to do something with it, right? And who knows, right? When you take a guy down, it's exhausting for that guy, but it's even more exhausting if you're landing ground and pound and you're beating him up and you're making him bleed. Almeida doesn't really do that unless it's a lower level opponent, like a Sergey Spivak, like a Alexander Romanov, these lower level heavyweights that either aren't in the UFC anymore or are at the bottom to mid level of the rankings. And it's a reminder that in MMA, takedowns don't score. And I really want to commend the judges for this one, because they said to the guy who just laid on top of the other guy and did nothing, they said, hey, you're not getting rewarded for this. You're not. You good on you for getting the takedown. Do something with it. And Almeida refused to do anything with it. Maybe he took the back. There was never a submission attempt. There was very little ground and pound, and if there was, it was very weak. And nothing happened on the feet, because every single time they were on the feet, Almeida shot takedowns. Now, Almeida's a phenomenal grappler. He's such a good grappler. The way he's able to take down Volkov, who's a good grappler in his own right and a big dude, and he took him down so easily, it was whoa, Almeida's next level. But you got to do something with it. So, this was a good precedent that the judges sent in this one. And it's weird because the way that we've been scoring fights the last year or two, It definitely feels like Almeida should have won, but if you look at the judging criteria and everything, yeah, this probably should have been Volkov. You got to do more with your takedowns. You can't just sit on dudes and you can't just smudge them. So weird fight. And I talked about this earlier, and we'll loop this back to Tom Aspinall and Cyril Gane, that right now heavyweight's in a horrible spot. Because let's say Tom Aspinall or Cyril Gane wins, right? And this was supposed to be the number one contender fight in the heavyweight division, Volkov and Almeida. No matter who wins that Aspinall-Gane fight, do you feel good about giving Volkov the title shot off that win? Because he certainly didn't look good, even though you could maybe argue he deserved the decision. He got taken down constantly. He showed very little takedown defense. Granted, against a very good grappler, but still. So it's almost like, okay, you can't give it to Almeida, obviously, and you won't. Even if he won this fight, you wouldn't have wanted to give it to him because it was such a boring fight. You definitely can't give it to him off a loss. You can't give it to Volkov off this really bad win. Maybe they do, because I guess they gave Cyril Gane a win off a pretty bad win, off a snooze fest. But regardless, I mean, neither of these guys are probably next for the title. And it's like, okay, what's next for heavyweight? You're rebooking Aspinall Gane, I guess, but then after that, I don't know. I don't know. And it sucks because we had two heavyweight fights tonight, number one contender fight and a title fight. The title fight ended in no contest, so that'll have to get rebooked. And the number one contender fight was a snorefest, and neither guys made good accounts of themselves. And all the guys below them in the rankings are guys that Volkov or Almeida have already beat, right? And this halts the rest of the division, right? Because to my knowledge, the only other major heavyweight fight booked right now, you've got Ante Delia, Tom Aspinall's boy, the Croatian guy, fighting Waldo Cortez Acosta next week. Besides that, it's like, what do you do with heavyweight? I don't know. Heavyweight's really quickly become one of the worst divisions in MMA. And it sucks because, heavyweights are, what get the casual viewers excited, get the people going, oh my gosh, it's heavyweights, there's going to be knockouts. And right now the heavyweight division's in a bad spot. And we thought coming into this card that finally we'd get out of some of these dark days, the John Jones and post-John Jones days. And now we're back kind of where we were, if not in a worse spot. So definitely sucks for the heavyweight division. The main card opener, the only finish on the main card, Azamat Murzakanov defeats Alexander Rakic, TKO round one. Maybe a little bit of an early stoppage. It was a weird knockout. It was almost like a power jab. It was with the lead hand. On the broadcast, they were confused if it was just a jab or an elbow, whatever. It's very clear that Azamat has insane power in his hands, and we knew that coming in. What I didn't give him enough credit for coming into this fight was how quick he is on his feet, and that really makes him more defensively sound than you'd think. I think he still leaves himself open to counters when he throws, and I also think he doesn't exactly have a great frame for 205. He's very short and kind of stocky. Stocky is the word. I was going to say pudgy. That's a little mean. But regardless, light heavyweight is in a really good spot right now, as heavyweight isn't. And this is a dark horse in the division. He's 16-0, knocks out, it feels like, everyone. He has so much power in his hands, and he's just very quick on his feet. I like Azamat as a contender now. I'm not a fan of him because of the PED usage and all that, but regardless, you can't deny he's got power in his hands and he's on a really good win streak, and he's probably a fight away from the title if they give him someone higher up in the rankings. I bet they give him Reyes or something. If they give him Reyes, that's just mean. That's just cruel if they do that to poor Reyes and his chin. But regardless, it is what it is. Murzakanov beats Rakic. Rakic, it's tough, man. 4-5 losing streak now. I was talking about it on the preview pod. His 3 losses were to 3 former champions. This is a tough one, and I think looking at Rakic, I think it's time for him to move up to heavyweight. And I see that's a very popular take on Twitter, and frankly, I agree. He's huge. He's a huge 205er. He could put on some weight, not have to weight cut, and be amazing at heavyweight. And tonight, it wasn't like he got dropped by some nuke from Azamat. Granted, Azamat has insane power, and it's hard to tell in the moment, but Maybe the weight cut's a lot. Who knows what it is, but he's lost enough fights and he's talented enough. We saw glimpses of it because he started out the fight well, landed some body kicks, landed a good head kick that kind of stunned Azamat for a bit. I think we've seen it with guys like Vitor Petrino, these 205ers, and they just go on these losing skids and it's not going great. Heavyweight, I've been talking about it all podcast. Heavyweight is not exactly in a good place right now. And if you move up to heavyweight and get a couple statement wins, all of a sudden you're looking at top 10, top 5 in the heavyweight rankings. So I think that's the move for Rakic right now, is move up to heavyweight and test your luck there. You're going to be much more athletic than a lot of the guys there. Your frame is going to translate because you're still huge and you're really long. So that's where I'm at with that. I think Murzakanov is a fight away from title contention, and I think Rakic needs to go up to heavyweight and test his luck there because we've seen other 205ers do it, and they've done well with it. The final fight I want to go into a little more in depth, and there's not much to talk about, but for a good reason. Quillan Salkilld, are you kidding me? What a head kick. He head kicks Nasrat Haqparast. Round 1, 2:30 in the round. Just disgusting head kick. There hasn't been a knockout like that in a while where you've seen a guy be unconscious that long after the knockout. Like, I was thinking, oh my God, is Nasrat dead? Is this dude dead on the canvas? It was disgusting. He took this on 10 days' notice. Salkilld did. And he's a prospect. And I thought coming into this Nasrat was going to win because I just thought Nasrat was on a good win streak. Nasrat's a high-level fighter. And I just thought Salkilld, for being young in his career, and he showed some blemishes in his last fight against Ash Moose, I kind of was just thinking to myself, Salkilld, this is too much too soon. What do I know? Holy crap. 10 days notice, cuts a bunch of weight, comes to Abu Dhabi, and head kick. Oh my God. I'm at a loss for words for it still, hours later after it happened. Just an absolutely disgusting head kick. He timed very well. He was using those kicks a lot. He was shooting some interesting takedowns in the fight from like halfway across the octagon, and we know he has good wrestling. I couldn't tell if those were legit shots or if they were just like, try keep this in your head, Haqparast. Regardless, it was unbelievable head kick and unbelievable knockout, statement win. He asked for a guy in the rankings that's tough because, the UFC lightweight division is very deep and the rankings are very, very deep. Who knows? I would guess there's going to be a card in February in Australia. They'll try and put him on the main card for that, give him maybe the main card opener, give him the spot to open up the card with a knockout against a more lower level opponent and then give him a title shot off that. That's what I think they'll do with him. But if he gets in the rankings, good for him. He's to take it on 10 days notice, to go to Abu Dhabi, cut all that weight, and to head kick a high-level fighter like that, just insane knockout. Props to Quillan Salkilld. Definitely deserves a performance bonus for that one. And then the rest of the prelims, one of my things I wanted to touch on coming into this card was how good the prelims were. Obviously, Salkilld definitely ended the prelims on a high note. Ikram Aliskerov beat Junyoung Park. Aliskerov didn't look particularly good in this one. His gas tank didn't look good. He just used a lot of good wrestling, which obviously the Dagestanis always have that in their back pocket, and I don't blame him for that. The Iron Turtle's a tough fight. I get it. He's a very tough fight, but we've seen people able to put damage on the Iron Turtle before, and Ikram, for being this dynamic striker, didn't look that great on the feet. So I don't know. Maybe the Whitaker fight kind of ruined his momentum a little. Who knows? Who knows what the deal is? But regardless, it was a win's a win. Ludovic Klein beat Mateusz Rebecki. Rebecki's got this uncanny ability that every time he steps into the octagon to just take years off his life. I can recall 4 fights I've watched of his, including tonight's. And all 4 of them are just dog fights where he's bleeding, he's got a big welt, whatever it is. I mean, he lost this one to Klein, and he put on a great performance in the 3rd round, really rallied back after, quite frankly, just getting absolutely pieced up in the first 2 rounds, disgustingly. He lost to Chris Duncan in that banger, fight of the year caliber fight earlier in the year, and took a ton of damage in that one. They were worried on the broadcast, and I said this too, is he coming back too quick? He won against Mukbek Oralbai back in the Abu Dhabi pay-per-view last year. That was an all-out war. I mean, that was insane. He was beating up Diego Ferreira, and then Ferreira came back and KO'd him. He's been in these wars, and it's dude, But this is his fight style, and he brings it. And honestly, it's not being super effective because he's 1-3 in his last 4 right now. But they're fun to watch. And on the flip side, Ludwig Klein is such a clean striker, man. He's such a good striker. The way he just he ends his combos with head kicks just so beautifully. He really has good flow. The counter shots were always there. His lead hand, his lead hook is really, really good. So that was a quality win for Klein and a banger for sure. Walter, how? 4 straight heel hooks. How is this possible? He heel hooks Louis Sutherland. How is this possible? It's the craziest thing. It's one of the rarest submissions in mixed martial arts, and to pull it off in 4 straight fights at heavyweight, he already ties the record for most heel hooks in UFC history, and he's done it on a 4-fight streak. He's done it 4 times in a row. It's unbelievable. He's so good at it. And it's this weird thing where it's like, okay, been talking about it all podcast. Heavyweight is in a horrible spot right now. And has he really heel hooked anyone who's like super high caliber? No. But at some point, right, after 1 heel hook, okay, that's crazy. After 2 heel hooks, really crazy. 3 and 4, it's like, okay, it's clear that his opponents are studying the film, and it's still just not, like, they get into the moment, they think they're ready for it, and then the second it feels like your foot's going to pop off, you're like, oh, I'm tapping. Wild. Just absolutely wild that he can pull off 4 straight heel hooks like that. At heavyweight's not in a good spot if you've got a guy doing 4 straight heel hooks like Walter Walker is, but you can't look at it for what it is and just applaud, because 4 straight heel hooks is unbelievable, and good for Walter Walker, man. He definitely doesn't fight like Johnny Walker, his brother. Very different styles, but both goofy, both unorthodox, and Johnny's worked for a while, and Walter's is working now, so good for him. And then the final fight I want to touch on, man, Nathaniel Wood, Jose Delgado. Wow. This was my fight of the night. I thought this was an incredible display of striking. Delgado was piecing Nathaniel Wood up in the first round. And there was a moment, especially after Delgado landed that spinning backfish flush, I thought Wood was going to get knocked out, and I was going to come on this podcast talking about how Delgado's the next big thing at featherweight. And he still might be because he's unbelievable. But, you know, Nathaniel Wood is, in my eyes, the most underrated fighter in the entire organization. Nathaniel Wood is so good. He's got such good boxing. His leg kicks are unbelievable. He's well-rounded. His one loss that he's had in his last 7 fights or so was in Abu Dhabi a couple years ago, and he got nut-shotted like 3 times. It was very unfair circumstances and still a close fight. Nathaniel Wood is awesome. A lot of people had issues with this decision. I don't. When you look at the fight as a whole, if you're grading it based on the 15 minutes, you're giving it to Delgado because Delgado had those unbelievable moments in round 1 where he had Nathaniel Wood gashed and bleeding. He landed the spinning back fist that dropped him. But that's not how MMA judging works. That's not how you do scorecards. And you do it round by round. In rounds 2 and round 3, I thought Nathaniel Wood outstruck Jose Delgado. I just did. I thought, especially in round 3, Nathaniel Wood's lead hook, his left hook, was absolutely money. And I thought he really just put it on Delgado as the pressure fighter. You know, it's a close fight. And Delgado missed weight by a pound, which sucked. In those situations, I'd prefer the fighter, if it's a close fight, the fighter who didn't miss weight to win the fight. Regardless, both these guys have unbelievable futures in this division. Nathaniel Wood should be ranked. Jose Delgado very well will be ranked. Both these guys' stocks went up, and it was hard, in my eyes, for both their stocks to go up from this fight because I already thought very highly of both of them, but just unbelievable. I'm very, very, very impressed by Nathaniel Wood's performance. He deserves the rankings. He has for a while. He's beating tough guys. He's not getting the finishes, but if you watch the fights that he's in, he's trying for them, and it's just he's fighting such high-level competition. This was such a high-level fight. For him to be on this great run that he's on, already probably deserving a ranked opponent, and for them to give him this hot prospect, and for him to withstand the knockdowns and the early damage in the first round, wins round 2 and 3, pull out a decision, unbelievable. I cannot speak more highly of Nathaniel Wood. That was freaking awesome, man. And Jose Delgado is awesome too. Don't miss weight. I get it was his first fight outside of the U.S., and he also struggles with weight cuts because he's a big guy, or I'd imagine he struggles with weight cuts because he's such a big featherweight. So I'm not, it was a 1 pound miss. It wasn't like as at Maxim, the flyweight, a little further down the prelims who missed by like 3 pounds, and he still lost. This was you could tell he tried, and it was probably just the travel. He'd never done the weight cut internationally before, so both these guys are unbelievable. That was my fight of the night. It's probably, I haven't checked, it's probably going to Kleiner and Rebetsky, but I thought Wood and Delgado was just an awesome fight. And, not much else to talk about from there. Some other decisions, Chris Barnett, it's over. It's over. We love Chris Barnett, but the run's probably over with him. And, Azat Maxim missed weight, lost to Mitch Raposo and Jacqueline Amarim, who I actually thought really highly of in the strawweight division. I thought she was maybe a rankings person, lost to Mizuki Inoue, who, had been away from the game for a while. So, and that was UFC 321. Overall, disappointing card. We had some banger prelims. Wood and Delgado was awesome. Klein and Robeski was awesome. The Salkilld KO was great. Well, Walter Walker was great. But this main card that I thought, had a lot of potential, even the knockout was a little underwhelming the way it happened, and from Murzakanov, and then some boring decisions, and then some good quality. Verna and Dern was a great fight, and then Umar and Bautista was a great fight. But, not the card we're looking for, and it's never going to feel that way when your main event is a no contest like it was. Yeah, man, and there was only 25 seconds to go in the round. It sucks. It's really unfortunate the card ended that way. I feel for Tom Aspinall. I feel for Cyril Gane, but not as much because you were the one who poked his eye, and you were doing that the entire fight. And Cyril Gane, we've had issues with him before, the hidden guys to the back of the head and stuff. So it's where we are now. Pretty devastating end to UFC 321 with that. The UFC schedule the next couple weeks isn't great. Onama, Steve Garcia is the main event on an Apex card next week. That's a fun fight, but, it's an Apex card, and it's, probably shouldn't be a main event. The week after that, it's Randy Brown versus Gabriel Bonfim, another Apex card, another fight that I think is okay. I'm actually a big Randy Brown fan, so I'm excited for that one because of that, but, okay. So really the next thing we're looking forward to with MMA, with the UFC, is UFC 322, MSG. What a stat card. Islam JDM, Valentina Whaley, Brady Morales, Dariush BSD, Carlos Prates, he's fighting Leon Edwards. Unbelievable card. Bo Nichols on that card. He's on the main card again. Yay. So, that'll be great. And then we'll have a couple good fight nights and obviously a good pay-per-view to end the year with Merab, but a couple 2 down weeks. I'm not sure what the podcast will look like MMA-wise with these next 2 cards just because they're not huge. I'll kind of do some gauging, see. I doubt I'm going to do a preview and recap for both those cards. I might just recap them if there's a big, if there's some big stuff that goes down, if there's a knockout or whatever may happen. So we'll see from there. The NFL content won't be stopping. We'll have an NFL pod reacting to Week 8 of the NFL season. That'll come out on Tuesday morning. For now, I appreciate everyone tuning in as always. If there's anyone here at the end of the podcast, I don't know why you're still here, but I appreciate you more than you could ever realize. And yeah, brutal. UFC 321, not how we wanted it to go, but it is what it is. Thank you all for listening /watching, and I'll catch you.